Like with most things in life, you can always compare something that's going on to an episode of The Simpsons. And I mean, that show's been on for over 30 years, so it's quite obvious that that happens a lot. That's why people say it predicts the future. It doesn't really, but what it does is just, lives in the moment and kind of talks about things that, normal everybody and everyday people talk about. So with that being said, it's always funny to see how these things kind of turn out after new consoles have released. I know it's a stark contrast going from The Simpsons to what I'm talking about. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting video because, again, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And how many people out there are actually talking about this? I think they would be afraid to talk about this. Now, on an episode of The Simpsons, there was a funny episode where Homer was like, or there was an episode of The Simpsons where they were going to go to either Disneyland or Knoxville, Tennessee, and they go to Knoxville, Tennessee, and it's basically, well, according to this AAA guidebook, Knoxville, Tennessee is great, and it's like, according to AAA, they're great, you know what I mean? And according to this is, you know what I mean? So according to Xbox, Phil Spencer says Xbox is great. I mean, what would you... And the same thing with PlayStation. Jim Ryan says PlayStation is great. Of course, these guys are going to come out and say that their companies are great. It's the more interesting fact when these companies... when outside companies and people start talking about this stuff and we get a little bit better idea about exactly what's going on. And that is what I like talking about. That's what I like hearing about. And that's exactly what this is about. So again, this is something that is very interesting to say the least. And this is going to be something that probably quite a few people are going to be talking about for a long time. Now, let's get started. I'm Crapgamer. This is Crapgamer Reviews. Back with another video. Hit that like button. Slap it hard. Slap it for your mama. Slap it for your daddy. Let's go. Let's have some fun. Now, when it comes to Xbox Game Pass, right? Like a lot of people pocket watch. A lot of people like it. It's fascinating. We all kind of look to it and we go, "Oh, well, what's going on here?" You know what I mean? And to be fair, it's an important thing to ask because even if you like it, if you don't like it, it's one of those things that we look at and we go, well, if this is supposedly the future of gaming, I would love to know more about it. So I actually think that is the part where people look into this and go, oh yeah, it's an interesting thing. I wish we knew more about it. How many people actually subscribe? How many people are Ultimate members versus non-Ultimate members? How many people are paying full price versus dollar deals and things like that? Or, and I think that that's all a perfectly perfect question to ask when it comes to it. We heard recently Sean Layden talk about it, who was the former PlayStation head, saying it's not really viable, where you have these $250 million games launching into a service thing. You're going to need hundreds of millions of subscribers to make your money back, and he could very well be right. They always call it the Netflix of gaming, this, that, and the other thing, but there's always this downside, or this perceived downside, where, people really don't understand, and they go, well, I don't see the downside. But then, when you talk about it specifically on Twitter, I always get people like, well, I haven't bought a game in 2 years because I just play Game Pass, right? And you don't see that as a downside, folks, right? Again, that's a downside. You're missing out on great content, and people want you to spend their money on buying their games. Now, it recently came out that Capcom's Q3 fiscal year 2020 software shipments split. Now, this is how they ended up, okay? PlayStation 4, 3.3 million. Switch, 1.15 million. Xbox One, 300,000. That's it. Something like Ace Attorney was only 4,000 copies sold on Xbox, right? 4,000. That's next to nothing. It's peanuts, really, according to this. And Capcom, according to Capcom, Xbox One is considered non-viable, with remasters selling around 1,000 copies worldwide on the platform. Better if versions not developed in the first place. Again, this is something that is starting to crop up because you could say maybe for Game Pass, and it's not just them. Take-Two, and they make NBA 2K and GTA and a lot of games, Red Dead Redemption 2. They say Xbox Games Pass style services don't make sense for frontline titles, which is something I've been saying for a long time, and people have been saying I'm lying. 2K Games owner Take-Two held its latest earnings call, and one of the questions that was posed to the company, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Strauss Zelnick, was asked about how Take-Two feels about subscription models which incorporate the likes of Game Pass from a business perspective. In response, Zelnick advised that our views remain unchanged on the matter, and the company believes a subscription model can make sense for deep catalog titles, meaning older games, but it doesn't really make sense for frontline titles. He explained that for any business model that makes sense in the entertainment business, it has to work for the creators of the entertainment as well as the consumers of the entertainment. And he says, and I quote, "I think catalog can make sense for the publishers. It would make sense for consumers who are avid, who really want access to a lot of product. But if you're getting into frontline product, then the economics are much more difficult to make sense of. And remember, consumers who are involved with interactive entertainment have different consumption patterns than those involved with linear entertainment." So if you don't know what he's saying video games are different than movies and television. Linear entertainment consumers consume something like 150 hours of programming a month. That's probably well over 100 different titles. In the case of interactive entertainment, consumers are consuming something like 45 hours a month, and that may be 1, 2, 3, 4 titles, but it's certainly not 100 titles. So from a consumer point of view, it's not clear that the subscription model really makes sense for the bulk of consumers. Now, 2K's Grand Theft Auto is an example of a game under the Take-Two banner, which is leaving Xbox Game Pass this month after just a short period on the service, most likely due to the game becoming a frontline title once more, following the release of the Enhanced Edition for Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S later this year. That said, Take-Two has included frontline titles on Game Pass such as NBA 2K21, so it's very interesting to see how that goes. We're open-minded. We have catalog titles available for subscription services. Very occasionally, we made frontline titles available as well, but we do see this more of as a catalog offering than a frontline offering. So basically, so what I'll say when it comes to like NBA 2K or any kind of sports game like Madden, like that game's going to come to EA Play or Game Pass Ultimate within that first 8 or 10 months or whatever it is. Like Madden comes out usually in August. By February of the next year, it goes into the service, right? But you don't want to give up those millions and millions of copies sold and that money that you make up front. So this is sort of like that dirty little secret that nobody's really willing to talk about. And I think that that's exactly what is driving some of this and some of the interest in the future of games and sort of what we're seeing. Now, does this mean Phil Spencer lied? Well, listen, he's not going to be 100% honest about it. He's not going to be, super honest and say stuff like, oh, well, this is how I feel about it, and, it's not making us very much. Although they did, they have said that in the past, Greenberg has, and, obviously they didn't declare any kind of monetary earnings basically through that, and they've been very quiet on the actual subscriber count when it comes to Game Pass. So yeah, we have to kind of wait and see and just sort of go, well, you know what, it's very interesting how this is kind of playing out and how all this is kind of just working, and I do think it's going to be a while, if ever, before we know that this is going to be something that's viable. And that's why when people always jump on, well, Sony has to do something similar, like they really don't. I mean, to be quite frank with you, they really don't. And the main reason why they don't is because it just doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to go out and do that, and to make it to where gamers don't have to buy anything. Like, listen, to me, it always makes sense to be able to buy your games, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I do hope that we get some kind of idea before too long. I do like the fact that it doesn't seem like, it doesn't seem like we're going to actually be getting overrun with this type of situation. Like, I personally don't mind these services, but I don't want them to overtake the main way that we play games. And when you see people say stuff like, oh, well, I really haven't bought a game in years, like, at that point, I just feel like, it doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. I'm just being honest with you. So, I feel that way. And I also feel like, it's just something that's going to probably take time to get the most out of. And I hope that does, I hope that we get some kind of information about it soon. in terms of what's going to happen with the future of these types of services and things like that. So I do hope that that is the case. And you know what? At the end of the day, I hope that we see, you know, whatever makes the most sense from these companies. And I'm looking forward to seeing exactly what's going to happen long term. But this is super fascinating for me. It is. It's just really, really fascinating. And I love seeing it. I love seeing it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's going on, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys think about this in the comments below. I will link this in the description. Thanks for watching. Rack 'em up. Crapgamer out.